And time again, history has shown that there is an effort to erase and to diminish the experience of people of color because there's almost a lack of believability. Welcome to Coaching with Ricky. I'm Ricky. This video is dedicated to people who know what it feels like to be the only ones in the room. If that's not you, that's okay, you can keep scrolling. I posted this video about an experience I had during a leadership conversation around performance reviews. Specifically, I was pointing out that there was racial bias and gender bias happening in the room, and I raised those questions and concerns, and people felt very uncomfortable about it. I see comments like this all the time and hear about it from clients where people say, "Stop being a victim. Stop having a victim mentality." And when statements like this are being said, it's always focused on the person who is usually a person of color or in an underrepresented community. In reality, it should be less about that because they're vocalizing and sharing their experiences of how they're perceiving things. Statements like this serve to shift the responsibility and accountability onto a minority person or onto people in underrepresented communities. And that's not their responsibility to absorb that. And yet we see this so often whenever conversations about racial bias or gender bias come up. The first thing that comes out is the focus tends to be on that person in the minority group and dictating how they should feel or how they should speak or how they should react and behave or how they should think in this case. Another common statement around this is, "It's just a joke, stop taking it personally." Again, this is shifting the responsibility away from the person who may be behaving in a certain way that is biased or saying things that are biased and shifting that accountability and responsibility onto the person of color by saying, "You shouldn't take it that way because it wasn't intended that way." Even though people in the minority groups are sharing openly and saying, "This is how I received it, this is how I heard your message, and this is my experience." It's a form of diminishing their experience. It's a form of erasing their experience, even though they themselves are vocalizing that. And I can't tell you how many times I have clients come to me and share similar experiences where they encounter this at work and they're being told, "Well, you shouldn't have taken it personally," or "They didn't intend it that way. You just received it that way." And this is a form of gaslighting, to be honest. This is a form of telling someone, even though you're telling me this is how you experience this or this is your personal experience, I'm telling you not to feel that way. I'm telling you that you shouldn't be thinking that way because that's not the case. That's not reality. That is a form of gaslighting because you're telling someone, especially someone from underrepresented communities, how they should think, how they should feel. And that's such a common behavior. And that is exactly the harm that we see and the repercussions of dominant groups compared to minority groups. Because society in general and the world in general is formed and designed to cater to the dominant group. That's the majority. And so when we talk about systems and processes that were set up in place in the workplace, as an example, paths to promotion, resources being available, all of those things were designed with the majority or dominant group in mind because that's what was prevalent and that's what was focused on. It wasn't designed to have the brown person or the black person in mind because they were part of the minority group. And so as a result, when those systems and processes were set up in place a long time ago, we see this disparity and this gap that people experience. And that translates to real daily experiences in the workplace where people of color may show up to the same job, doing the same work, but they experience things very differently because of the fact that their environment and the way that things were set up was not keeping them in mind and it wasn't designed for them. Or another favorite one is, "Stop pulling the race card," as if it's a game. This isn't a game. A game is a game of poker where the most you lose is just money. This is personal because when we start talking about jeopardizing people's identity, people's cultures, people's experiences, and diminishing that through words like "stop doing this," or "you're just playing the victim," or "you're pulling a race card," that is a problem. That is no longer a game and it is personal because that is the daily lived lives of people of color. That is their experience. And time again, history has shown that there is an effort to erase and to diminish the experience of people of color because there's almost a lack of believability or a lack of empathy and awareness towards that, even though people actively vocalize that and share it. And as I'm thinking about this, it really reminds me of why it feels so familiar whenever I see these comments come up. It's because I've encountered these kinds of people so often throughout my entire career in the corporate world, moving from an individual contributor all the way to a manager and now ultimately to an executive. These are the types of people that I've encountered where there's a lack of empathy and there's a lack of self-awareness because there wasn't ever a need for them to have to shift. There wasn't a need for them to have to really change their perspective and see things in a different lens because their environments and the systems and processes built around them were catering towards them. So whether it's intentional or not, they had the privilege of being able to be in an environment where they felt very comfortable enough even to step into other people's spaces and to say, you should be experiencing this in this way. You shouldn't be thinking this, or you're having a victim mentality, or you're pulling the race card. Comfortable enough to make statements like that in other people's lives and other people's experience. That is the definition of having privilege. And generally, there's a lack of accountability, especially when those bad behaviors of biases or skewed perspectives towards underrepresented communities are called out. That is not something that they're used to. They're not used to having to take accountability and responsibility for their words and their actions. So when people call out those bad behaviors in the workplace, as an example, that is against the norm. That's not what usually happens. But more and more you see that people are feeling more empowered and people are feeling more confident in sharing their perspectives and their experiences, especially people in marginalized groups. So this message is directed to those people out there who know what it feels like to be the only ones in the room. I've been there myself, and I have so many people coming to me sharing similar stories of racial bias, gender bias, and yet when they share that in the workplace, they're told that they're taking it too personally, or they're told that they should be thinking and behaving in a certain way or receiving it in a different way. The responsibility and accountability is being pushed down on people like that. And that's not fair. That is so frustrating for me to see. So this message in this video is dedicated to people out there who know exactly what I'm talking about and who have been there and experienced something similar at work or in life in general. Because you are the kind of people that have empathy, have self-awareness, because you've had to do that to navigate through life. You've had to do that to succeed and to survive in a world that may not have been designed with you in mind. So just remember that even if there might be voices out there telling you you should be feeling a certain way or you're interpreting something incorrectly, even though that's your own personal experience, don't listen to that external noise. Listen to what your intuition is telling you and what your gut tells you, because nobody can tell you how you should feel and how you should think. Only you know what's best for yourself, especially if it's your own lived experience. So just know that I see you and I understand you, and there's power in just knowing that you trust yourself and you trust your own intuition and how you experience things, and you don't let other voices and other words dictate how you should think or how you should feel. If this video resonated with you, please feel free to subscribe. I talk constantly about career, culture, and life in general, and I'm looking forward to getting to know you.